How did you first become interested in the importance of touch? Why is touch important to you now?
I have something I could add. I don't know if it's, coming in on this way. When I was 21, I had a patient, it was my last affiliation as an occupational therapist, and he had a stroke, and he lost the use. I keep thinking it was his right hand, but his language was not affected. And his hand was like this, and it was flaccid. And he had it in a sling so it wouldn't dislocate. And he had to shuffle, a picture that we know if we are familiar. And I was assigned to him. I was my last intern. I was assigned to work with him. And this is 1963. He obviously wanted me to work on his arm, but I wasn't supposed to take his arm out of the sling because I would give him false hope. My job was to help him compensate and become a one-handed person. But I took his hand out of the sling and I held it and it felt like a piece of meat. I couldn't differentiate anything. It was just this heavy lump of flesh. And in myself, I vowed that one day I would know what was under my hands. And he gave me that. And today, I could feel what was under my hands, but I couldn't. It's over 50 years ago. I still hold him as my teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So touch came to you first as curiosity?
No, I don't. I think curiosity came later. The shock of not feeling, the despair that I couldn't help him. And I was told I shouldn't. But that didn't bother me. But that I could not tell what was in my hands. So the curiosity came out of the despair. And the deep desire to be able to help him.
Remember when touch first
Yes,
struck you?
very vividly. When I was 28 years old, a friend of mine asked me if I'd ever been to Esalen, and I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Get in the car." And we drove down the coast and waited till midnight and snuck down the hill into the bathhouse. And I was sitting at the edge of the Esalen hot tub, and in the midnight sky there was the moon and 5 planets across the ecliptic, and it was the night of my 28th birthday, Saturn return. Loaded cards. And somebody came up behind me and started working on my shoulders, and I had never experienced knowing touch. And this guy's hands were magic. And in very few minutes, my brain was in gears and wheels all over the bathhouse floor, and I had no idea what had hit me, but I knew it was a very big deal. And that was the beginning for me. Throughout that summer, it was summertime, I was in between semesters for my PhD in English literature at Berkeley. And when it came time to go back to complete my last year, I looked up the driveway and said, well, I can go back and finish my dissertation on William Blake and write about this experience, or I can stay here and live it for the rest of my life. And I just put my car keys back in my pocket and didn't get out for 19 years. And during that time, I met the smorgasbord of professional touchers of all kinds coming through, and the seed took off.
What a night.
Oh my God, unforgettable. Truly, the most abrupt turning point I have ever experienced. 9 years of professional preparation just went, and I went, didn't please my father altogether.
No, I'm sure that was a disappointment.
Until I put the book in his hands, and then he went, oh, I see, many years later.
So your writing skills have a long history.
Hmm. Well, I was sitting around Esalen watching people come through a weekend or 5 days, and their lives changed dramatically, sometimes profoundly. And my curious scholar mind just said, there's got to be a reason why these changes are taking place so positively and so swiftly. And that's what launched me into my curiosity of how is touch, and how are these interactive therapeutic sessions impacting these people with such force. And that led to the poking around the literature that finally led to Job's body.
I'm curious about the name. It seems so right, but I wondered how it came to you.
Well, it comes from the book of Job, of course, and I have a rather personal reading of Job. The part of Job that fascinated me was that in the midst of his moral and physical collapse, when all of the rules he'd been following so carefully, and all of the strictures of the scriptures, and all the ceremonies he never missed, he still fell into catastrophe. And there's a portion in the book when he says a series of things, one of which was, I must take my flesh into my teeth, and my guidance I must find within me. And at the extremity of God's scriptural guidance failing him, my reading is, his revelation was, the only way out of this dilemma is to consult myself deeply and find my truth and my spirit, and the scriptures are not helping. In fact, one of the shocking things about Job, many people don't remember, is that Job's calamity was the result of a bet between the God and the devil. The devil saying, you think your boy Job is so obedient? Give him to me for a year and we'll see what happens. And in that clash of titans of good and evil, Job had to find his own way out. And I find the language interesting. I have to take my flesh into my own teeth. I have to search for the answer within. And that was the seed.
I'll have to go back and read it. The verse that I remember from there is, though he slay me, yet will I trust him still. Interesting how we pick different parts of a story.
Well, of course, the reason Job has lasted throughout the millennia it is indissolubly ambivalent and ambiguous. And of course, the happy ending was written some 700 years later.
That I didn't know. I don't know the sequence of how things emerge. But that's very interesting. Thank you. I'm glad I asked you that question because I wondered about it. It's such a
probably the most frequently asked question I get about it.
Profound story. It's got such a...
It is indeed. Aesop without an explicit moral at the end.
I'm interested from your story, Deane, in the relationship between touching and being touched. And I ask that even now, like, how does our giving of touch find support in the way we receive touch? Or what and how you receive touch and feel touch?
Well, again, there I find really a thicket of ambiguities. For one thing, I cannot touch without being touched. It is a fusion of tissue and mind and sensibility. But of course, there's a difference between my touching as the therapeutic agent and someone touching me as their accepting a therapeutic agent, but therein lies the ambiguity. And if we both aren't being deeply touched and sharing the mutual yet different sensibilities of that, I don't think it's therapeutic at all. I sometimes wonder if my clients are getting as much out of it as I am.
You thank them in the end.
Exactly. Thank you for this precious privilege of communion.
What astonishes you about what you're able to accomplish with touch?
Oh my God. Let's toss that one to Bonnie first. Let me get my wits.
The whole thing is astonishing, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yeah, it's like living continually in miracles. Not that miracle is that which, this is where the language comes in, feeling is so clear. A miracle is actually what one can expect, rather than it's what one doesn't expect. That what actually can happen happens in a very natural and easy way. It's very easy. It's only a miracle in a way because it's not difficult. We think of miracles as this once in a, there's this and then there's a miracle and then there's this. But actually the miracle is the way. And it's this that might get in the way of the miracle.
I'd like to think of it as either there are no miracles or the whole darn thing is a miracle.
Yeah.
But, I do not perform miracles. The miracle happens as we commune through these two levels of language. You and I have had our share of dramatic improvement of seemingly intractable situations, and aren't those wonderful experiences for us? But to me, the whole enterprise has been given the inexpressible gift of being able to understand humanity and the spirit on a completely different level than was available to me through any other pursuit that I had found prior to delving into this world of flesh and mind and mutually reactive, responsive growth of tissue and spirit.
And it's what's natural. I guess when I say miracle, because people respond in ways that are not considered possible. But it's only because they've been repressed or not allowed to emerge. Rather than they're the unusual, they're the normal. When we're in contact with this just natural flow of being with others.
Well, and there's the wisdom that's contained in all the books and libraries, and then there's the wisdom that is beyond language and is millions and millions of years old.